But I am going to bury the lead here a little bit on talking about the new format and talk a little bit more about what motivated the new design. Like, why are we doing this and what the inspirations were. I think there's a quote from this book that I like that put it into perspective for me. It's Deep by James Nestor. Some people hate it, some people love it, but I do like this quote. It says, the ocean occupies 71% of the Earth's surface and is home to about 50% of its known creatures, the largest area inhabited anywhere in the universe so far. And just, it's the global, not the global, it's like the galactic perspective on it that kind of drives it home for me. You know, the history of life on Earth and therefore in the observable universe has been in the ocean. Uh, and so when I use the word ocean, really what I mean is the history of life in the observable universe. And when you hear the word ocean, please think the history of life in the observable universe. I did try to get some quantifiable data about what percent of the world's biomass and biodiversity is found in our seas. But this is actually a pretty lucrative thing to try to pull together in an afternoon. I don't think there's any doubt that it's a significant percentage, but I was really hoping to see that majority. Not that it matters. Okay, and since we're talking about the project's motivation and inspiration, it's going to be hard not to talk a little bit about climate change in here. Hopefully that's not too controversial. It is a drum I don't like to beat on just because I don't think it's very professional. If you are working on a conservation project, you know, everyone knows already. If you're here, you know, looking at like remote marine monitoring projects on Hackaday, you know, you're probably on board with the concepts here. Um, yeah, and I think it also maybe creates like an attitude of environmental defeatism, which is not something we need. I'm only bringing this up to illustrate the need for the project and also to elevate the profiles of the projects that have come before us, before me, emphasize the importance of their work and why I find their contribution so meaningful and why I hope our contribution will be similarly meaningful. And I am not the marine biologist. My awesome, adorable, loving partner is a marine biologist, and so she sent some of this data my way. I'm just someone who has drank the Kool-Aid and is an engineer, so. But this comes from it's the Global Reef Monitoring Project, the Global Reef Monitoring Network, and they do this report, and it's the status of coral reefs in the world. So it's super top level. I'm definitely going to link it in. You know, if we want to get into the nitty gritty of how they do this, we definitely can. And so they do go through regionally the status of coral health in the world, but we're just looking at chapter 2 here, which is the global summary. And we're just looking at the percentage of hard coral cover. And so here you can just see in the 90s, we'd have a massive dip. Seychelles was hit super hard. It's like 90% destroyed. And it has bounced back and subsequently dipped again. They summarize it here, and they say, since 2009, the overwhelming trend in global average hard coral cover has been downward. Between 2009 and 18, global average hard coral cover declined from 33 to 28%, which represents a 13.5% loss. And this is just a massive loss of the world's, you know, biodiversity, biomass, and it's just it's too much to just let go by undiscussed. So that's why I think projects like this are super worthwhile. The other resource I want to show is put together by NOAA, and they have this imaging satellite that's doing sea surface temperatures. I will also link this in. And what they've done is taken 10 years of data measuring the sea surface and then, you know, getting averages of a certain pixel, which is, I think, 5 kilometers in this case. So that way we can now compare our current sea surface temperature to what the average was over that 10-year period. And so this is available as like a Google Earth profile too, although you can watch it, you can view it on their website. And so here we can see what that deviation looks like. And this is, you know, just kind of today, these last couple weeks. And of course, temperature is not the only factor here. You also have to take into consideration acidification, which contributes to ocean acidification. And so there's other study was done, published in Nature and Science, and what they did was project different levels of ocean acidification and temperature, and then recreated those environments with different coral ecosystems that were representative of different biospheres. Yeah, I didn't even lie about that. They created tanks that represent different biospheres and then replicated the projected future ocean conditions to see how they all fared. And again, I'll link this in, but I'm just going to go to the summary here. At the top in the abstract, we conclude that instead of simply transitioning to alternate states that are capable of buffering coastlines, reefs are at risk of drowning, leading to critical losses in ecosystem functions. So, it's a global problem, and it's up to us whether or not this is just going to be like an autopsy report, or if projects like this can be useful in impacting real change. And so for the Spirit Lifter, I think that you'll... That's pretty good. I'll title that one The Bad News. I actually think there's a really great opportunity here for citizen scientists, makers, hackers, etc. because, tech literacy is actually very low in the conservation sector. Government officials don't have time to be studying up on the latest techniques. Same thing for scientists. Scientists, are really have a strong emphasis on getting their reports and data through, and less about designing more efficient systems to enable their work and more kinds of their work. And this is why you find when you look at scientific papers, you're more likely to see a latex equation than testable code and part files, right? And so hackers actually really do fill this niche of being able to support here, especially considering that every off-the-shelf unit is in the price of tens of thousands of dollars. If you want to get, a pH probe buoy off the shelf, it is going to be tens of thousands. Even just doing temperature and an accelerometer is going to be crazy expensive. And these are very common day things for hackers. So yeah, I actually think there's a phenomenal opportunity here. The other thing is, it's not like people aren't on board for this. You don't go out into the world and meet people who are actually, I don't care if the ocean does die. I hope it dies. No, everyone's on board. Everyone wants to fix it. And so, this is something that at a grassroots level can really have a big impact, right? So just taking care of your neighborhood and taking care of your local community is a massive step forward. That's why we did the recycling buoy, right? This is removing trash from the ocean and turn it into something valuable. But obviously that's not going to work for everyone. So that's why we have this more modular setup. But before we get into that, I do want to go over some of the projects that inspired this one, because there are some truly incredible projects out there. The first one that I ever found and that springs to mind is just an incredible reference is this Cave Pearl project. And this is beautifully documented. Essentially what this man has done is make these hanging pendulums for caves, and they have accelerometers in them. And so when current flows by, the other project that just has to be talked about was this OpenCTD project. It is also absolutely incredible, exquisitely documented. Essentially what it is a water quality probe, or a water probe that you can throw off the side of a boat. I think you used fishing poles at one point, and take readings at different depths. So you'll have a pH probe, dissolved oxygen probe, salinity probe, and a depth gauge, and you can associate all that data at different depths in the water column. He describes it as the workhorse of oceanography, and I think he's right. And if you are, anyway, if you're working in coral conservation and in coral growth, right, these are the exact parameters that we're worried about. If you're worried about algal blooms and over temperature, right? This is going to be like the most cost effective way to get that data. So it's an incredible project. Yeah, I did want to do audio and video, which does just kind of require something that isn't a microcontroller, at least makes it a lot easier, which is why we're using the Raspberry Pi. So that's why we didn't go this exact route for our project. But again, like just an absolute beast of a project. Be sure to check it out. We are using the exact same probes as he's using. I forget the name of this exact kind of plot. Right here you can see it's found a thermocline. Same kind of build quality, documentation quality as the Cave Pearl project. He has a PDF and he walks you through exactly how to build it. Now, these are both underwater Raspberry Pi cameras, and this is like exactly what I wanted to make. And is like spot on with our build. And these guys have used it to catch like quite a lot of life. He has a video of an octopus. He's in South Africa, so maybe that's too easy for him. Again, like the documentation is here, not as well documented as the other projects, but like clearly getting monster results with this. You know, and I saw this well before I started my project, so this stuff is just incredible. This is almost exactly what we're making. I just hope that what we're doing is a little bit more versatile in terms of how it can be deployed. But look at this. He has the weight belt weighing it down. Oh my gosh, this one. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one. I'm excited about this one. I just saw it the other day. This guy has made a deep algal bloom detector. And so I don't know if you guys have heard the term harmful algal blooms. Hopefully you have on our channel. If you're here, you've definitely heard of them. I have to think about my audience. And it's a huge issue. My partner and I actually did like a little hackathon where we used satellite data to try to identify HABs. And that's how she ended up with the job she's with now. So a lot of people want this, and there really is not like a good way to deploy a HAB detector within the open source space at all. And this is like the first attempt I've seen at it. He has this like really cool 3D printed display and enclosure. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose is of the enclosure, you know, but this is like the exact kind of thing that small communities need, you know, because harmful algal blooms roll through and they kill all the fish, and they're very hard to detect. You can use some satellite data, but that's really just dependent on the presence of chlorophyll in the water and like near the surface of the water. And the thing is, there just really is never going to be a substitute for like a direct measurement. I mean, satellite data is great, but like it might not tell you what's going on at like your local harbor. So like a project like this is incredible. Obviously, it's not like ocean ready. You know, and these probes are expensive. To get proper probes is expensive. It uses like gravity probes. So you have to put a lot of work into keeping something like that calibrated. But yeah, like this is the exact kind of thing we'd also love to be a part of. Okay, and this next page I think is maybe the first kind of like modern era open source smart buoy project. It's on Instructables as well, and it's beautifully done. It has all the sensors you'd want on it. It uses a Raspberry Pi, you know, and it gets the cost way down of, you know, what you would normally have to pay for this kind of thing. It's beautifully done. There's tons of information. You know, for me, what I worry about is just like 3D printing an enclosure and then post-processing the enclosure. It's just like a lot of work every time you want to make a new system. And then you have to like test out and verify that the seal's gonna hold. It definitely isn't being made to go to any depth. But yeah, that's kind of why we just didn't go that route. PVC is just like designed for pressure, tons of fittings, ready to go. You just have to go buy it at the store. So that's why we didn't go the 3D printed route. Blue Robotics. We had to talk about Blue Robotics. They provide so much of what our project needs, and we do use quite a few of their components in our project, including the cable penetrators are the biggest win, as well as the a system for checking our seal. Those are huge game changers. They also do provide enclosures, and we've used some of them on our more professional projects. Um, and they've also been like a great reference design for this project, but I think the price range is like just a little bit out of reach for, what like a citizen scientist hacker group might want to do. Basically, it's impossible to get out the door with an enclosure 3 inches or 4 inches that's like under $300. It's going to be over $400 if you want the electronics tray. But yeah, so obviously if you need like a more professional solution or you are better funded, like this is going to have you 90% of the way there very quickly. Yeah, so like $400 just to get going on an enclosure. No mooring, no electronics. The system's great. Check them out. Their switches are great. Their sensors are also great. Really can't recommend it enough, but if the budget's not there, the budget's not there. And I think this is just like a little bit outside the scope of like, oh, we made a really great open source project. You just need $400 to get the enclosure. So that's also why we didn't go with Blue Robotics, although we are huge fans. Okay, so while all these projects are marine themed, they actually are wildly different use cases. So the smart buoy is used for surface sea conditions. Those cameras are taking video at the bottom of the ocean. The open CDT is traveling through the whole water column. And then, of course, the harmful algal bloom detector doesn't have a solid marine case yet. Yeah, so even though all their use cases are different, they still have to solve the same problems in terms of ocean readiness. And this really boils down to a few simple things. But you have to be watertight. Everything has to be clamped down. If anything is loose on this, it's gonna rattle to death. It's gonna collide into other things. It's gonna disconnect things. Learn that one the hard way.